Okay, we're ready to begin. So, shall we start with the national anthem?
I think does Lee want to do his piece after the anthem?
Fine.
Yeah, okay. Do the anthem and then Lee will do his piece as the sponsor.
Okay.
Well, that was an interesting presentation.
He's a Long Island native, still in high school. That fellow goes by the name of Taz, and he's also playing a guitar from a Long Island-based company called D'Angelico.
Okay, we're going to let Lee introduce the Habitat for Humanity for us, and when he gets finished, I'll have to give a brief introduction to our speaker.
Well, we got to now have these sponsors, so.
But
Good morning. I'm Lee Silberman, CEO of Habitat for Humanity of Suffolk County. And it's my pleasure to have Habitat sponsor Senator Brooks's appearance today with LIMBA. Habitat, we are the only home ownership program in the country that offers a home ownership opportunity to families earning between 40% and 60% of AMI. We could not do what we do without the cooperation and support of the state legislature. New York is one of the few states that has a very active home ownership program. We take advantage of the Affordable Housing Corporation, and in this year's budget, after several years of lobbying, the legislature did increase the grant amounts from $40,000 per house to $75,000, which is phenomenal considering our costs on Long Island. Unfortunately, the legislature at the same time did not increase the pool of money for these grants, which means it'll be a little bit easier for us to fund houses on Long Island, but overall fewer homes will be funded by the program. So we're certainly hoping that next year the legislature will actually increase the pool of money to go along with the increased limits of the grants. But it's my pleasure to, as I said, sponsor this meeting, as the partnership of Habitat is a partnership with government as well as volunteers, and we definitely need the support of our state and local government.
thank you, Lee. Bill, you were going to go into some detail on the sponsors on the.
Sure, yes, I would like to recognize our major premium sponsors. We have Louis Joe's Avalon Aviles. We also have Gershal Recycling, Covanta Energy, and National Grid. These prestigious organizations are committed to the community that they serve in many ways, and we appreciate that they are committed to our mission of LIMBA. Thank you all.
Okay, and I will be introducing Senator Brooks. we're a couple of old guys that have been around going now and doing our thing for a long time, but John and I have really never known each other until we met at, of all things, a Habitat for Humanity breakfast. And we had a small conversation, and I wanted to solicit his help on getting maglev, and we were supposed to have a meeting together, but then the pandemic hit, and we never got to do that. But I got to know a little more about John, and he's been a great public servant in not only in politics but in his community. And he's the kind of man that we look up to, and who has served without fanfare or without being too dramatic. He is a real part of our community. John, it's wonderful to have you on our show. And we're going to allow you to give us some ideas on what you're doing, what you'd like to see happen. Then Frank and I will interrupt you from time to time to interject some questions. After a while, we'll open it up to the rest of the group. Okay, everybody, please welcome our speaker.
Thank you all very much. It's great to be with you. I think we're all looking back at a year that's almost unimaginable in terms of the challenges that we had and all of the issues that we faced. And I think we all recognize that life in the United States as a result of last year has changed in so many ways. And we're still dealing with a pandemic, a virus that it's sometimes smarter than we are. It changes, and vaccines we have become less effective, or a segment of the population that hadn't been that much subject to the vaccine now is, and it tells us that we're not as smart as we think we are. We didn't recognize what we needed to do early enough. We lost more than 500,000 people just in our country alone. And it probably took us 6 months in before we were even starting to make some traction with this thing. So I think more than anything else, last year should be a learning year for us. We've got to rebuild some things over the next year. Recognize our medical system needs work. Our ability to put together protective equipment in terms of PPE and others needs work. We've let ourselves be too dependent on other areas of the world to supply us with various equipment, and I hope as we look back and as we move forward that we take the lessons and the challenges of the last year and learn from them. I think that's important. As Ernie said, my intention was not to run for elected office, to be perfectly honest. I was asked twice to run for the state assembly, basically to explain in one year a school funding plan that I had, and a second time it was to go over reforms that are needed in the Nassau County assessment program. The first year, surprisingly, I was endorsed by Newsday. I was running against an incumbent who is also a friend that had about 70% of the registration, so I shouldn't have won, but I endorsed anyway. And the second year, I ran against him again, and I wasn't endorsed, but the endorsement that Newsday gave was to endorse the incumbent not because he was the better candidate, but it was more important that I stayed on Long Island and worked with the county on the assessment program. So I thought those things were unique. When I was asked to run, I was asked to come to a meeting to explain something, and I went through the school funding program. And after about an hour, I asked them, why am I here? Well, we want you to run for the state senate. So I said, I just retired. I don't have money. They talked me into running it. I ran against Mike Venditto. As you all know, Mike's dad got into a jam with some stuff. Mike's dad and I grew up together. We worked together in Pathmark. When I first met Mike, as the campaign was coming, I told him to say hello to your dad. And he said, you know my father? And I said, I know your father. I know your aunt. I know your grandfather. His grandfather had passed. So Mike said, you knew my grandfather? He says, I never met him. So I felt bad. But anyway, that campaign had a life of its own. We election night, we had a whopping 13 vote lead. And we didn't know until a week before we started session that I'd won the election. Guy that worked on the campaign said after it was going to, they're doing a recount, what are you going to do now? I said, it's not in my hands, it's in God's hands. If he wants me to be there, I'll have more votes, and if not, I won't. And, we won the campaign, and then I remember the way Albany works sometimes is a bag of confusion, hollering, yelling, screaming. I was sitting in the Senate, and it's a beautiful, the chamber is a beautiful room, and I looked up at the ceiling, which is all gold, and I said, God, you must have some sense of humor to send me to this place. And that's when I realized the challenges we're going to face. So, I'm probably the most fiscally conservative Democrat up there. I vote independently a great deal. I think independently a great deal, and I like to call it as I see it. So as we go through this stuff, it's not a Republican or Democratic message. It's just the way I see certain things, and I think we've got a hell of a lot of work to do here. So we got a little issue that we'll walk through stuff. Just Long Island's important to me. My family arrived here on Long Island in the 1600s. And we've got documentation that shows that we had folks that fought in the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Civil War. My family wasn't bright people. They owned most of Seaford at one time and sold it for nickels and dimes. But they were a bunch of baymen. I had a great, and probably a couple more great grandfathers that one of the things he did is carve shorebirds. When a family member passed away a couple of years ago, there was a number of shorebirds there that I have here at the house. My next door neighbor is a big guy on decoys and all the rest. And I said I had some shorebirds. He says, "You have shorebirds?" He says the last one of his shorebirds that was sold for $1.4 million. So I might be rich. I don't know, but the birds are downstairs, and we'll keep them there. So anyway, jumping into stuff, I think we all recognize here on Long Island we face a lot of challenges. We've got environmental issues and housing issues, and Lee, I can't compliment you enough for what you guys do with the housing. One of the things I would really like to see us do more, we've got an abundant number of abandoned houses that people have left, and I think we need to set up a system where we can recover them before they are left to rot and get them back to some people to do. So that's an area I've talked with the state a great deal. And I'd like to see us try to move in that direction. I love the fact that I've been to a few of the houses you guys have worked on, that we have companies that help. You know, I know I was at one where I don't remember if it was Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, but they donated a lot of the appliances, you know, the dents and so on and so forth. But I think we got a lot of people in Long Island with a good heart. And I think we can do better recovering a lot of that housing.
John, I would like you to expand on something you started off with. And the term you said was we need to build on our medical provisions. Now, here's what my comment on that is. Are you saying that, well, let me ask you this. Put it to you this way. We learned that by not having a universal health plan,
Mhm.
we did not protect the rest of us who did have medical plans, because we didn't protect the people who were uninsured.
Mhm.
And they became the most vulnerable, and they spread the disease more. And so we're all in this together, and we don't know it.
Right.
And now, just expand on that a little, please.
So I meant that in a couple. Well, so I'll go to universal health care in a minute, but where we were, and I have some friends that work in hospitals in the city, and a couple of nights I was on the phone with them trying to negotiate to get different equipment with companies actually in China, and these phone calls were like 3 a.m. kind of thing. And then as they're talking and you're close to an agreement, and we got an offer from so-and-so, goodbye. And we went. So we were too dependent outside the company for all types of equipment and vaccines and all the rest. Part of that, I think healthcare, you know, we have a big push here, or there's an effort here to have a universal healthcare plan in New York State, and it hasn't moved. It hasn't moved because no one can figure out how to pay for it. And when I've sat with some of the sponsors, their simplistic answer is the rich will pay for it. That's not an answer. That's not a solution. And we had some discussions. So, for example, we had a discussion about deductibles, and they said you're going to basically oversimplified now. You're going to be covered for everything, and there's going to be no deductibles. That's it. I says, do you understand the importance of a deductible? I said, what you're trying to say is we're going to take care of all of the medical costs in the state of New York with no assistance. You've got round numbers, 200 million people in the state of New York, and you're going to have to fund for every aspect of the health care. When you use a deductible, $50, $25, $10, whatever, you're dramatically reducing the cost of the program, the cost of the funding situation. A number of years back, when I was the director of risk management for Nassau County, I had challenged the state health insurance plan on a rate increase. I don't remember the exact numbers anymore. I'm old. But they were asking for something like a 9% rate increase. And I argued and showed them that what they needed is less than 1%. And we went back and forth and back and forth. And the state health insurance plan itself, New York State Health Insurance Plan, is not a profit-making program. However, in a number of years, they had earned additional money. And they had quite a bit of money in what they referred to as a dividend account. So we argued what was going on with the health costs, and where I said, and the budget director said, if we listen to you and we do what you're saying, we believe we're going to end up in a debt of millions of dollars. So I said, well, listen, I said, I'm an insurance guy, you know that. You got your dividend account over there. I'm telling you that you can cut $450 million in premiums based on what I'm seeing and where you are. Take that $450 million out of the account, put it over here as a retro reserve. I said, if I'm wrong, there's your money. You have it. And if I'm right, then I was right. So after a long discussion, he agreed to a 1.2% increase, which saved $450 million across the state for health insurance. And then Governor Patterson punished me by putting me on some committee to help oversee the health insurance plan. And as we went through the year, at the end of the year, they were $100 million in the good. So then we sat down to do the rates, and the guy said, all right, we've got to figure out the rates. What you did last year, that money's gone. So, we're going to be looking at a significant increase. I said, no. I said, you made $100 million. The $450 million that we put in the reserve is still sitting there. So we start out with $550 million that we can be looking at as a reduction. During the course of the year, I left Nassau County and I went to town of Brookhaven. So they quickly notified the governor that I was no longer working at a location that was part of the plan, so I couldn't be on the committee anymore. But my point here is we don't manage things well. We weren't looking at what was happening. One of the things we tried to do in Nassau County is I wanted to put in place a wellness campaign. We were going to put 3 medical facilities in county offices where people could get hypertension or something. You could go and get checked every day and get some things done and do some healthy programs. And I wanted to do that as an experiment. So the state agreed to let us do that as an experiment. However, they weren't going to assist us financially, and any savings they were going to share with the rest of the state, which was basically stupid. But I mean, we couldn't do that. But the point is, we can do a lot smarter things with health programs and have health units at different facilities, work locations where people get assistance. We can manage ourselves so differently than we had. I don't believe for a minute we understand how to pay for universal health insurance right now.
Senator, your point of deductibles is well taken. I want to present a thought to you and see if you agree with or disagree, and debunk it if you think it's not viable. We spend a ton of money on people who are uninsured. They come into the hospitals. We do not throw them out on the back. But by the time we get to them, they're already very sick and they're very costly. If we had a plan that was paid for by taxes, would those taxes be less than the premiums we pay plus the inadvertent expenses of the uninsured that come into the hospitals? We don't know what those numbers are. I don't know what those numbers are. What do you think they are? Do you think that's a good comparison?
I think if we had remember when we had Blue Cross Blue Shield way back when?
Yes.
That worked as a foundational base that pretty much everybody could afford. And that's something we should be doing, to do that stuff. I had to deal with a situation a number of years back now, a family member that was a real loner, and he worked off the books. He got sick, but he didn't tell anybody. And he was 64 years old, and he knew he was sick, but he thought he could get to 65 and then Social Security would take care of his issues. I got a phone call from him in February to say, I'm really in bad shape. Can you come to the hospital? So I went to the hospital, And the second day I was visiting, the doctor came in with the results. And he had prostate cancer and a couple of other issues. And so he was in the fourth stage and he had kidney failure. So I figured that's curtains. I talked to him. He says no, he could live another 7 years. He had purchased one of the minimal state health insurance plans to have, and while he was in the hospital, he was getting the right assistance and actually showing some progress. But when the doctor said that he could live for 6 or 7 more years, which I was, wow, that's pretty good. But when he was discharged from the hospital, his plan, the treatments they were given, his plan wouldn't cover that. End of story, he lasted a month and that was it. And then when we went through, cleaning up where he lived, he had maintained years of records of what was happening to him health-wise, but he never acted on it. And the point here is he had a mindset of beating the system, not having to pay a lot of taxes, don't have health insurance, all the rest. We can't let people live that way. We've got to find a minimum level of protection that we can give everyone. There's no reason in the world why we can't have different types of screenings in communities that are done free of charge to identify certain ailments that people may have. And certainly with the pandemic right now, the vaccinations are basically free for everybody at this point. There's no reason why flu shots and the rest shouldn't be handled that way. If we sank a core amount of money into doing screenings and vaccinations and other things for those people that don't have insurance, we would catch them at the early stages. If you catch somebody at the early stage, the cost of curing the person is going to be a hell of a lot less. So while I'm opposed to what they're proposing because they don't know how to pay for it, they've made it ridiculous in terms of the amount of coverage, and I don't mean that literally when I say that, but to have things. They've got a provision that allows somebody with a critical ailment to move into New York, and in a couple of years they can enter into the plan. As I said to them, what you're doing here is you're going to say that anybody in this plan has to drop out of Medicare and everything else. I said, many people are close to retirement. Many of them have insurance that is going to cover them for the rest of their lives with the company and a retirement plan, or others can deal with Medicare, Medicaid long-term. You're asking them to leave those. I said, many people are thinking, I'm going to retire next year, 2 years later, I'm going to move to Florida, I have all my health insurance. Well, if they drop that other coverage, retire a few years later, that coverage is gone. When they go to Florida, they don't have an option. I think.
You mean you can actually sacrifice accidentally the benefits of Medicare?
That's what their plan requires.
Yeah.
Drop out of that stuff. It's stupid.
Yeah.
We can't do that. But I think we have an obligation to do a better job with the general public in terms of screenings and vaccines and the like. And then to monitor those people. And then when we deal with somebody that's got an illness, if we can jump on it early enough, I think it's clear.
Isn't it fruitless to do something on a statewide basis if we don't have something that's universal across the United States?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And when we looked at the universal plan, because of the position that I was in the county, I was invited to go into a meeting with Ted Kennedy in the city when what was known as Obamacare was just being talked about. And if you remember, there was what they referred to as a Cadillac plan. And at a certain number, you were going to be taxed. I think it was like 18,000 per family. I'm not sure if that number's right anymore. But I spoke to him and I said, you know, one of the problems with this plan is you're not recognizing regional cost differences across the United States. I said in New York State, the New York State health insurance plan for a family, the premium is just about $18,000, almost at where your cap is right now. And that premium is driven by regional cost factors. I said, if you took the New York premium, $18,000, and you had somebody down in Mississippi and you had $18,000, the doctor would walk alongside of him each day to work because of the regional cost factors. He laughed, he thought that was funny, but the point of the matter was one of the foundational failures, I think, in that program was to pretend that the cost of insurance, it wouldn't differ from location to location. It's clearly a regional cost factor difference that we had to do. And the people in New York were going to be punished by that program the way it went because of those premiums. So I think what we don't do in this country on anything is we take a universal approach. You know, the assistance we got for the pandemic was a universal number, very different from place to place. We're in a discussion. There's a discussion going on now about minimum salaries, and they want that to be universal, statewide. I mean, countrywide. It's different. You know, somebody in New York making $15 an hour is not getting by. Somebody in Mississippi.
It's bus there in New York.
Yeah. So we've got to start to be realistic with ourselves. We have regional cost factors. We have them within the state of New York. We have them nationally, and we've got to recognize that situation. But I think you know, we can put together what I would call a national Blue Cross Blue Shield type minimum coverages. And do a better job with screenings and vaccinations, and that will reduce some of the exposures, and then go from there. And then we've got, of course, the failure that we've got many people here that aren't here legally, and they're afraid to step forward and get assistance. And then you see, as we saw on Long Island, pockets where the virus exploded, because nobody was getting vaccines, nobody was in a state of good health. So I think part of what we have to do is we've got to recognize that there is a level of people in our country right now that can't afford health care or don't think it's available, and have a bad choice of words, but if you will, a maintenance type health program that's available for everybody, just to take that out. I don't think we're ever going to see a universal health plan the way they're talking, and the people that work on that, it includes everything. You know, they'll sit there, they'll tell you, you can do a sex change, you can do, I mean, come on, let's think about what we're trying to do here. Let's provide, you know, health care for real illnesses. If somebody wants to have a plastic surgery or something because they want their nose to look different, you know, that's not what we should be doing. But I think where we are right now, we're that plan that we have in Albany is not going to fly.
Yeah.
So, Ernie, let me just, we want to open up to Q&A, and I want to make sure that everyone knows that they can ask questions in the chat box here. Either ask to have, I can ask the question, or you can ask to be unmuted. I have one more thing, though, to add to this discussion about the possibility of a change in healthcare plan, and that's the perspective of a small business owner such as myself. Mm-hmm. And it's not even that I'm complaining about the cost, although the costs are high. Yeah. It should not be my job, my position in society to make these decisions. That, where is that written in? It makes no sense whatsoever. And more so, as a small business owner with a conscience, I provide healthcare benefits, but then I see big box companies, Target, Walmart, they don't provide any. They have 150 part-time employees almost entirely so that they can avoid these benefits.
Yep.
And so the current system is very, very broken in a way that really severely impacts our capitalist, our entrepreneurs and our businesses.
Yeah.
And that's something that you just don't hear voiced very often. But I think when you think about the implication of it and what it does mean, how many people do we all know that are at their jobs just for the benefits?
Yep.
So how many people are stuck in place economically because this ramshackle system we have gives them no options?
Yep.
So I don't expect that you have an answer for it. I know it's a part of a much bigger picture, but that's where I stand in my particular spot on that, as a small business owner.
So along those lines, and I've rambled on, I had a lot of points to get to, but we'll get to them as we go by. But we look at immigration right now as an example, right? We have an incredible problem nationally. And many communities here on Long Island have a large number of individuals that are not here legally. We're in a situation where we're educating them, we're assisting them with housing, medical services, the whole 9 yards. Immigration is a responsibility of the federal government. We haven't done a good job with that. We really don't have any policies in place. But we here on Long Island are educating students here who are immigrants, not here legally. That funding should come from the federal government. We're providing medical assistance, we're providing housing, we're providing food. And as a result, our taxes are exceptionally high. We're paying through those to county school taxes and county taxes, town taxes, what have you. And then we have a situation that in 2017, the incoming administration decided that, New York's beating the hell out of us on taxes because they are spending so much money that they're getting a huge reduction in their federal income that's taxable because of all their local taxes. They're wasting money all over the place. So we got a situation where they decided, again, a national decision, that $10,000 was a reasonable amount of money that you could deduct in your federal income taxes. Well, in Mississippi, that's probably no one's close to paying $10,000. Here on Long Island, every one of us is probably paying $10,000 just on your property taxes. And what we do is we get a deduction, and then just for simple numbers, your tax bill was $20,000. You get the $10,000 credit, and then that additional $10,000 is taxed again by the federal government. So you double taxed on that money. We're in a situation now that the estimates that I've seen, the SALT tax results in New York State spending about $15 billion more a year to the federal government for that tax. And a lot of that $15 billion or a lot of that extra money that we're spending is federal government responsibilities, I believe, to manage immigration, to provide education and stuff that we are paying on their behalf because they won't pay for it. And then we're getting punished. So in some ways, we're triple taxed for that money. I think that right now we should be beating the doors in on Congress to put an end to the SALT tax. And if they're going to continue it for any reason, then that limitation has to be regionalized to reflect regional cost factors. And the federal government has to not only put in place a real immigration program, but fund those courses, not the local community funding them. And I don't know how we can afford to live here if we don't get in that situation. This past year in Albany, I introduced legislation that would cap residential property taxes at 50% of total school spending. Right now, we have many, many districts, particularly here on Long Island, that are funding 60, 70, and 80% of their educational costs solely by regional property, by residential property taxes. We make the assumption that the value of your home is reflective of your economic position. So you have two people living next to one another, and their houses are worth $50,000. $500,000. One of them, that house has been in the family for 50 years, whatever. Mom and dad passed away. The son or daughter inherited the house basically, or bought the house for next to nothing, and they have no mortgage. And next door is a young couple, just got married. They put down, I don't know, $50,000 just for a number to buy the house. They have a $450,000 mortgage. Equity of the house, we got one group of family, the one side that owns the house free and clear. Another one that actually has a $50,000 investment. They got $450,000 mortgage that the bank owns more of the house than they do. Yet we tax them the same way. They're equal. They're not. We have seniors who bought a house, and I got people I grew up with that bought houses when or years ago when they first got married. Maybe they bought the house for 15 grand, just for a number. Today, the house is worth $800,000. They're retired. They worked for the town government, let's just say. They got a minimum pension. Their taxes are 30, 40% of their income right now. But they're rich because they got this house that's now worth $800,000. They're not rich. We have got to stop the overdependence on residential property taxes, number one. And then we have to look at the makeup. So I live in Seaford. Seaford, if you're familiar with the community, has absolutely no commercial property tax base. Commercial property taxes fund 10% of our educational costs. And because of the formulas that we use, we're considered to be a rich community. 20% of our educational costs are funded by state aid. Everybody in Seaford is funding 70% of the cost of education through property taxes. This past year, when the bills came out in Seaford, we had an old elementary school that had been sold, knocked down, and they put a senior citizens complex in of condominiums, 114 units in there. Because of the assessment changes and everything that happened, the taxes on that community went up 42%. There were seniors that just bought the house that were sitting on $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, $11,000 tax increases. They're screaming about this thing. So I went down there, and a bunch of them came into the one condo, and they were showing. The woman was sitting there. She just sold her house that she lived in her whole life to move into the condominium. Thought she'd be set for the rest of her life. Her school tax increase was $8,000 a year. She was beside herself. And what she said was so true. She said, I'm going to lose my house. When you don't pay your taxes, they take your house away. So here we got a situation where we're taxing people based on an assessment number. If you don't make your payments, we'll either penalize the shit out of you by interest charges for not making the payment on time, or we'll take your house. How can we have somebody's lifetime savings taken away because they can't pay something that is based on the value of the home, not their true financial position. It's insane. So,
How do we remedy that, John?
what's that?
How do we remedy that?
Well, here's what we do. Number one, we say that we're going to cap a maximum amount that taxes can be for residential right now, which residential taxes, which I put at 50%, and to bring all the states, all statewide, to bring every school district in line with that. You know what the cost is? $1.1 billion. That's all it's going to cost to do that. That'll fund that thing. We have to change the way we fund education. We have to make it more in line with true reflections of your ability, probably higher dependence on residential, on income taxes. We have to recognize that communities that don't have a commercial property base have to get assistance. When we were flipping through doing the report, I happened to arbitrarily pick a school district, Hauppauge. You know, Hauppauge, 49.5% of their educational costs are paid by commercial property tax. Seaford 10. A lot of communities even less. We have to recognize the advantage some communities have on some of these situations. What we don't do is we don't control school spending. If we were smart, we would say that we estimate, and I'm going to make up numbers here, that in St. Lawrence County, way upstate New York, you need $10,000 a student. And in Seaford, our cost of living is 50% higher, just making up numbers now. Then in Long Island, we get 15,000. We should be providing a core level of funding on a per student basis, taking consideration regional cost factors for, if you will, the normal student. Then when you have students that have learning disabilities, you provide additional funding. If we funded the required educational programs that way, where everybody basically gets what they need based on an operation that is efficient, not wasteful, we could do that all through a statewide income tax or lotteries, whatever we want to use. If you have a district that wants to spend more, they want to give their superintendent $1 million salary, just for a number. Well, that we should do by property taxes. Let the community decide. But we should be in a situation that we can say that every student in the state of New York, regardless of wherever they live, regardless of their family's financial condition, is going to be entitled to a quality education that is fully funded by the state of New York. And it is funded in a way that is reflective of your economic positions. If you want to spend more, fine, you can do that. But you would vote on those tax increases based on what you want to do. And if it's to give the superintendent $1 million salary, and they say no, the superintendent doesn't get the $1 million salaries, doesn't take away from their educational program. And then we monitor that each year and adjust for inflation. And we're reflective of the financial conditions. We're in a situation here right now, you know, you're hearing houses are selling for big numbers on Long Island, right? We're seeing it. So on my block, 2 houses over, the folks that lived in there a couple of months ago decided that they wanted to sell the house. They put it on the marketplace. Within a week and a half, they sold the house in excess of what they listed the house. They sold the house for $640,000. The house next door, within the last month, decided they were going to move too. They put the house on the market higher than the house next door, got over 20 bids or offers in excess of that price. Their house was sold. I don't know how much that sold. One woman keeps tabs on this. I didn't know it. She gave me the information. I don't know what that sold for. but it's well in excess. So right now, our houses are seeing big growth, right? What that's going to mean, if you're not seeing it in other communities, is 2 or 3 years from now, your assessment is going to be reflective of that big jump. Let's just say it went up 20% for numbers. That big jump, you're going to be taxed based on that. We're going to make the assumption you're richer than you were yesterday for no reason other than the block you live on. That's crazy. But we're going to tax you that way. So
John, I'd like you to address an entirely different topic, but if you want to stay on this, you can. One of the things that is very, very costly on Long Island is the cost of police.
Yep.
That is outrageous. And, when you start paying a man $200,000 to wear a badge, he better have a PhD too. And, I think it's out of control. And what do we do about it?
Well, there's a couple of things. First, we've got to realize part of the where we are with the salaries is the strength of the police unions in terms of negotiating.
But that negotiation is based on the fact that they elect you. You're electing your boss.
Yeah.
It's hard to.
But I mean, so let's look at some things that are done sometimes. So right now, one of the things in the news a lot is the actions of certain police officers, and a lot of the evidence associated with these crimes was done by the cameras that these guys are wearing, right? Everybody's wearing. So in Nassau County, as an example, in the last contract, the offer was to give a cop $3,000 a year to wear that camera. So think about what that offer really was. A cop's going to be in a job for 30 years, let's say. That's $100,000 a cop just to wear a camera. That's being mandated. We can't be making deals like that. You've got to look at what's been done in staffing and the work schedules. And when you got people working 3-day weeks, and then 2-day weeks and stuff, you're in a situation where the cop has a great deal of off time, days at a time. He doesn't use vacations and other stuff. He can accumulate that. And we're in a situation where many times police officers will leave. They will be retiring and getting accrued leave and sick time, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 check.
Based on what they're earning today, not when they sacrifice the time.
Not when they earned it. And they're in a situation that increase in money in part is looked in part of his final salary that's averaged out to create his pension. So we really have to recognize that we can't have a system where because of the flexibility and scheduling, you can accumulate massive amounts of money to get paid out when you leave and have those monies incorporated into your retirement pension. We may also have to start to look at certain things that we ask police to do and maybe segment different people. I mean, mental health issues and stuff, or we shouldn't be sending a cop to those other than where there's a violence hazard. But we need other people to look at that. And if we do a better job with mental health management, we're gonna bring a lot of that activity down. How many houses, how many calls do you get? We got it in the fire department too. These burglar alarms and fire alarms go off, and you're sending 2 or 3 cars to a response on those situations. To charge a fee for those, maybe one way people can manage some stuff. But we really need to negotiate better. We need to recognize that we can't have contracts that allow someone to have that windfall payout at the end of the day. And, and we need to monitor the activity of what's going on more. So
I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
Bill Miller had a question a while back. I want to make sure he has time. We have 5 more minutes left in the meeting.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Senator Brooks, for your Q&A today. I know you are a part of the Long Island Senate delegation that calls for Cuomo to resign. How can he still lead when he has violated and damaged the public trust?
So we'll correct what you said a little bit. What we didn't ask him to resign. We asked him to step aside and let the Lieutenant Governor, Kathy, assume responsibilities until this matter is resolved.
If you don't have to answer, it's okay. I understand.
Just how to phrase stuff. I'll answer the question. Some of the stuff he's been charged with, kissing people and stuff. He has that way. At times he'll give you a hug and a kiss and stuff. So some of that stuff is building something out of nothing. Other things are a big concern, without question. I think this investigation needs to be completed. I know that Tish James is doing an investigation. The Assembly has started an investigation, and they would bring charges of impeachment, and then the trial would be held in the Senate in terms of removing him from office. Some of the stuff that's out there is of real concern. So I think, I don't see how the man can possibly stand for re-election. I would say that. I think we have to let the evidence tell us what the real facts are and then make a judgment. I think surely the governor's been weakened by all of this without question. I think it also puts more responsibility on us. We have to show stronger and better leadership. We have got to be insisting on things like SALT being repealed and immigration issues and the management of our school systems. Here on Long Island, we've got a crisis right now with our electrical system and who's going to run that. If you live in certain areas, we've got a crisis with New York American Water. We've got to do some things there. He is weakened. He's going to have to make some decisions for himself on that. I think his situation demands that we are stronger. We have to show better judgment. We have to question things. Like I said, I pushed hard for the tax reduction, the cap. We're going to continue to push for that right now. We're not done with that. We have to do a better job standing up. I think we have to make sure that we get a fair share of money in this recovery aspect. I think we gave him a great deal of authority when the pandemic first came. And I was one of the people pushing hard for that because I understand incident command. That's what we use in the fire service. You do have to have one person pulling the strings. But then it got down to a finite level. Whatever you're done, okay, you can do this. This job can go back to work, but this one can't. This one can do this many hours. That went too far. So we got to do that. So it is difficult. I have to say that I believe Tish is going to do a fair and honest investigation, and then we have to deal with the facts. I'm not going to prejudge. I'm concerned. I'm not going to prejudge him because I don't know how truthful some of these stories aren't, and I'm not challenging what people say. I'm just not accepting everything for what it is. It's got to be proved, but it is difficult. And I think you have to demand more from us right now, in terms of where we should go in addressing these problems. And I had a list of things to talk about. I didn't get a tenth of the way in today on different issues, but there's a hell of a lot of stuff that has to be addressed right now, from environmental concerns to employment to taking care of our seniors and effectively managing immigration and all the rest. So I think, if you will, the governor's situation requires a much stronger legislation right now.
Senator, the list of things that you didn't get to, if you want us to publish them on our website, we will. If just as bullets or even in its entirety.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that to do it. Look, to me, this is fun. Number one, what we're doing right now. I love to do this stuff. In that window, there's so much to talk about, really. And I don't mean it.
Well, we like to explore things with the people who set policy. That's like people like you. Yeah. And we do it without a prearranged thought on how the outcome should be. We're not political in that regard, although we all have our own politics. Yeah. But in this forum, we try to be as fair to everybody that gets on here, and we want their ideas, we want their thoughts.
No, in no way was I saying I thought this was unfair. I think this is what government should be more about: real discussions on the different issues and being.
And we appreciate that they do that. You do feel that way. That's we didn't miss that.
And Ernie, I think we just need to have Senator Brooks back soon to get into the rest of the topics that we didn't have time for today.
That would be my pleasure, number one. And Lee, I'd love to sit down with you and talk about more of what we can do from a housing standpoint. I will say one thing. When I brought up this cap on the 50% cap with people in the building side, they said, if you bring taxes down by 30%, we could start building without IDA programs and stuff, because we could manage tax levels at that thing. So we've got to look at the obstacles with regards to housing, recognize that high property taxes does one thing: it increases home ownership costs. We have to change that. So I'd love to sit with you and look at ideas. And I think again, the zombie houses, we can do something with that.
It would be my pleasure to sit down with you, Senator Brooks. Suffolk County formed a zombie task force back in October, which I was appointed to. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's now the end of April, and the task force has yet to meet. So anything you can do to push that along would be great.
Zombie task force.
But I'll reach out to you separately and let's set up a meeting. That would be fantastic.
We had I went through, Copeg has a hell of a lot of zombie houses. And there was 14 on one house. And I went around with one of the people from the town just looking at those things. And some of the houses are shot. And some of the houses, if we could get the mortgage company to realize these people are gone, and we could get it at a different number, we could put people in those houses without having to do significant amounts of work. So I think one of the great things we have collectively is ignorance, and we have simple solutions that we don't take advantage of. And after that house is gone for 6 months and the raccoons got into it, or other people, what you needed to invest $20,000 in, just for a number, is now $250,000 or something. So I'd love to sit with you and figure out ways we can get stuff done.
That would be my pleasure.
Senator, I want to thank you for agreeing to do this, and we will invite you back. This has been, I realize that you have so much on your plate that you couldn't possibly get to anything that was comprehensive. But we did cover a couple of important topics, and we will do that again. Frank, do you have any closing remarks?
Well, we want to mention that we lost our funding source, which used to be the breakfasts, the actual breakfast fees that we charged for decades. Now we're in a virtual world. So we've replaced that with a way to donate to LIMBA on our website. And we ask you to to consider doing that so that we can
We'll do
continue
that.
to have these town hall meetings.
I'm my day today, just so you know, when I'm leaving here and going over to meet with Mike Dowling on some issues now.
Mike Dowling's been on the show a couple of times.
Mike's good people, and I'm not. He didn't tell me what he wants to talk about, so I'm in back of my head. Well, what's this going to be? Whether it's going to be medical liability issues or whatever. But you know, I think the greatest thing we can do is to encourage more conversation, and people can throw ideas up, and then you know, we can solve some of these problems. We got to keep the politics out. You know, so many people in Albany are just thinking about the next job they're going to get. That we can't work like that.
Yeah.
Well, that's what LIMBA really has been around for, has that been that interchange and dialogue, and we hope to continue in this format, which has its ups, you know, it has its positives and negatives, but at any rate, it's what we have for right now, and it's working out for us.
No, it's good. I enjoyed this. I really did. And
Thank you so much.
And just let's briefly mention the next meeting, Ernie.
We have
Kathleen Rice.
Representative Kathleen Rice. Kathleen, we had her at a live meeting when she first got elected. We'd handled that at the president's office over at Adelphi. And when Mr. Scott, Dr. Scott was in charge there. And I haven't spoken to her for a long time, but we do keep in communication. So we're looking forward to her. And I hope, John, Senator Brooks said you'll be on that call too, perhaps. And
Sure.
maybe you could add something to, we will put you on the list of people who are noticed when this thing comes up. So if you can be there, you know, your voice is important.
Kathleen and I, she's on the Veterans, I think she may have been moved off the Veterans Committee now, but I chair the Veterans Committee up in Albany, so we've worked on some things along those lines, and obviously we have some common communities that we both represent, and she's good people.
Yeah, she comes from a great family too. I've met them. So anyway, I think we're ready to close.
Thank you very much, Senator.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.